Did you get a haircut there, Sebastian?
It looks
Oh,
like
yes,
you got
sir.
all of them, not just one, all.
It looks like you got all of them and then some.
Well, I came back from the jungle and my wife is like, you got to do something about this.
Had
It's just like-
Had a couple of ticks.
How y'all holding together out there, Georgette?
We're actually doing really great, sir.
Keeping y'all busy, huh?
Oh yeah, we're at 15 paying enrollments for Eastlake this month so far.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And how about your other?
Miss Hobson just logged on. I want to say they're around 10 or 12.
We're gonna have to get her. Y'all are gonna have to play that game that Master Oliver and I used to do all the time. Keep tabs on each other so you can make it a little contest on who's gonna beat who.
Oh yeah, my contest is getting our monthly profit up. So I'm right there on their tail. So
Good.
Yeah. The Matt Smith, did I ever tell you the Keith Hafner lobster story?
No.
Keith Hafner, who was, at his peak, probably doing 120,000 a month or more, with 50 to 60,000 net, plus overpaying his two sons and his brother, right? But prior to that, he was really struggling, mid-20s. First time I visited Ann Arbor, it was when the tow truck was towing his Mustang away, because he was financially in a pretty deep bind. And not to give the sob story with him, but I'm trying to motivate him. So I said, Keith, why don't we do this? Why don't we do a bet, and we'll pick one of my schools and your school, and whoever has we did on the billing, whoever has the billing highest at the end of the year buys the other one a lobster dinner, right? And so first year we did it, I beat him like by 250%. Second year we did it, I beat him by like 150%. Third year I beat him by like 20% or something like that, right? So far, no dinners have been exchanged, one thing or another. We just have this bet going back and forth. And then he really starts like getting his act together. And next year he beat me by like 25%. Next year he beat me by 50%. And this has been like now 5 years. And so we had a meeting down in Florida. And I said, well, crap, we've had this like lobster bet going back and forth. And I guess maybe technically he owes me one or two, but he's done so well. And so I'm like, well, what can I do? And we're supposed to, of course, go out to dinner and have lobster. So I go and buy this lobster at the grocery store, live lobster, and go back to the hotel room and put it in the bathtub and get one of those big platters that they have for, service at a hotel, room service. And so next morning at the meeting at 8 o'clock, I come in with this lobster flopping around on a tray and tell everybody the story about how we've had this lobster bet and where Keith was when we started and where he was now, and gave him the soon to expire live lobster. So yeah, it's always good to have those competitions going on. Anyway, hey, as we have everybody popping in here, is
And just to finish Georgette's thing, it looks like it's 14 and 12, so pretty close there, Georgette.
No, it's actually 15. We had another one yesterday, but Nestor Convento was working on closing 2 more. And so I didn't want to update that page yet. And I had was already done for the day.
Yeah, Master Oliver used to play that game too. When we put the numbers together, but I didn't count today's yet.
Yeah.
He would always hold.
I thought I was going to get 2 more.
He would always hold a couple back, and we call that sandbagging.
Sandbagging,
He would give me the actual numbers to the very end, and then all of a sudden he got all these enrollments at the end.
There would always be 3 or 4 on pocket hold.
Just to see how many extra he needed.
Let's see where he's at.
By the way, today is Miss Smith's birthday today, so she just turned 20.
Thank
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank
Birthday.
you.
No, I think she's 21 because she's legal now.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm legal.
But she's on fire. We got like 15 signups, and we're probably gonna do 20 by the end of this by the end of the month. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Have fishing trips, sir.
Good job, guys.
I love it. I love it. As a quick poll, who in here is using Elite Digital to create Facebook traffic? Raja and Rachel, we didn't go over your numbers earlier. What and Jan, there's Jan. I see Jan's hand. Jan, Rachel, what is your ratio? Because I didn't ever ask you. We never got around to it earlier. What's your ratio from lead to appointment running right now?
From lead to appointment, our average for the year, just for Facebook leads.
Just for Facebook.
Okay, you're gonna kill me, but I don't have my Facebook lead numbers up
But I
to
think-
date.
Oh no, I turned my volume down.
We did it, you know what? We did it like a week or so ago when you went over Paul's numbers. Grandmaster Smith was going
Yeah.
over Paul's numbers, and ours were pretty similar to his. Because I remember
So-
you saying something about his sign up ratio wasn't real high, but ours was similar, and I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, here's ours for March. Here are our
Okay.
numbers. We had 14 leads to 5 appointments. So our lead to appointment for March was really bad. But then of the 5 appointments, 5 showed. So we had 100% there and then 1 enrolled. That's not the average. That's 1 month. Normally the appointment to show is lower than 100%. And usually our lead to appointment is a little bit higher. But yeah, that's what we had for March.
Okay, so
Year-to-date average?
yeah.
We have it. Why she's getting it, I'm thinking from lead to appointment, we were at like 21 or 22%. That's what's in my mind. From lead to appointment, not from show up to appointment, but from lead to appointment. That's where I was thinking we were.
So
Yeah,
what
that's
I
pretty-
do have
that's
for
pretty
numbers
weak.
right now is in January, we had 7 enrollments from Elite Digital. In February, we had 9 enrollments. March was our outlier for the year and we had 1. But I will have all the numbers for you in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, well, that means that you need to really work on getting hold of them quickly and making appointments and put some other systems in place to make sure you're getting a tight conversion. Because the numbers that we were hearing earlier today were 51, 54, 61, 69, and 74% conversion from appointment, from lead to appointment. And when we shifted, we had been using some other people to do Facebook advertising, and I've been through a number of folks, and what I found with a lot of the ones who advertise that they can create a lot of traffic with Facebook is they come out of the gate really strong, and then after 6 weeks or 3 months or something, they run out of steam. And what has to happen for somebody good is they're paying attention to it, literally every day, refreshing the ads. And by the way, that's why there will be, it'll start strong, it'll taper off. When it tapers off enough, now it needs a whole new fresh set of ads in one thing or another. That's just exactly the same as TV ads, newspaper ads, direct mail going to the same person repetitiously. So, but what they are really good at is paying attention and refreshing it. And we have Kate on with us once a month. But we just get off a meeting with her a little bit ago, or Tuesday, I guess, not today. I'm thinking of the other meeting. But if you guys can see this, did I share the right screen?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so we've got a range here. Michael Wong has 59 leads.
Where'd that put you on gas?
3/4 of a tank.
Oh, good.
Can we mute whatever?
Can you mute, guys, make sure you mute yourself if you're not talking.
By the way, anybody's worrying about their gas mileage is worrying about the wrong thing. Okay, but you can see here, month to date, JJO has 16 leads. Delfino has 47.
Job,
You can kind of
Delfino.
Colby has 13. Melissa and Krista have 26. Rachel, they're showing 20. So month to day, you were talking about March numbers. Dean Romanelli 30. Tim Harrison 27. And we can kind of go through the list here. John and Emily Davis, 21.
Dervish,
Jason
79.
and Marie, 27. Olga and Larry, 37. But you get to,
99 with Dana.
yeah. That's actually not one of our guys. But 34 with Paul, 79 for Dervish, 59, 42. And what is typical, and this is when we did the beta test on this thing with Elite Digital, because everything we do, I try to do with the Mile High Karate schools and with maybe one or two clients, members, but I try not to just kind of inflict it on everybody before we're pretty sure what the downfalls are. And Amanda, you're on here somewhere, right?
Yes, she's right there.
Amanda, unmute yourself too, if you don't mind. Correct me if any of this misstates, but when you guys started off on the Facebook advertising, you were getting a lot of leads and everyone on your staff was complaining that they were flaky, right? It was, we can't get them on the phone. They won't make appointments. When they come in, they're flaky, right? There was that whole series. Plus, to add insult to injury, I'm confusing two things. But that was mostly it, as you were getting a lot of leads, but really abysmal conversions. Is that a fair thing to say?
Right. That's how we started. It took us a minute to get our learning curve right and adjust.
And in March, I think this was the March number you gave me, you had 74% conversion from lead to appointment.
Yes, sir.
And how many enrollments did you do off of that?
In March, we had 30 enrollments.
Okay. So I want to use that example because it's natural. If you don't have a benchmark of what's doable, it's natural to attribute it to, the flakiness of the leads or something like that. When we first get people to do the big live event promotions, go out to a July 4th event, go to an Easter event, go to a movie premiere or something like that, almost always the first time they say, oh yeah, well, we talked to a lot of people, but we didn't enroll much. I don't know if I want to do that again. And it's like, okay, well, of the people that came through and spin the wheel, how many of them did you make an appointments? And usually they say, oh, well, 1 out of 10. It's like, well, we know the benchmark is 75 to 85%. Of the ones you made appointments for, how many of them showed up? Well, hardly anybody showed up. Well, we know the benchmark is worst case 50%. Best case is probably 65, 70%, but 50% is about the benchmark. How many of them that came in for an intro ended up enrolling? Oh, hardly anybody. Well, we know the benchmark is worst case 50%, probably best case 75%. And then we go to work on tuning it. Amanda, that's same thing we did when you were beta testing this thing, right? And and I get a reputation of being kind of an asshole because you came to me and said, well, we're getting a bunch of flaky leads. And I said, no, it's not the leads that are flaky, it's your staff that are flaky. So let's figure out what's going on. How quickly? Yeah, right. How quickly are they following up on the leads? What are the mechanisms for following up? And that's where most of it was falling apart, right? You were getting a lot of leads, but not appointments.
Right. We didn't really, it was such a large volume so fast. We were kind of like, scurrying for a minute, and which showed us, pretty boldly that our processes weren't correct because we couldn't handle that influx. Yeah.
Well, and it certainly is possible to create something where you flood a bunch of broke people in, or you flood people in who don't live anywhere near you, or, whatever the case might be. But in the case of Facebook, you should always be aware of the quality of people who are coming in, because you can change the targeting and target richer neighborhoods, not poorer neighborhoods, or target neighborhoods with young families, not retirement communities, and one thing or another. But that is a piece to keep in mind. But our benchmark we talked about it with the other group on Tuesday, is worst case should be about 50% lead to appointment conversion. And your target should be 75, 80% lead to appointment conversion, right? And I just shared with you that, for instance, Amanda is doing 74%. Paul Pendergast was 69%. Greg Macy's 3 schools were 51, 54, and 61%. So it really is a fair benchmark. And I would argue, and I'm sure Master Moody would agree, that the Google lead should be even a higher closing ratio. Because the difference between, and by the way, I'm not talking about any opt-in on your website. I'm talking about the ones that specifically came from Google search or specifically came from pay-per-click, because that's a different beast. Saying website leads is like saying info calls, right? You've got to back it down to where they came from. The conversation we had a couple weeks ago, Amanda. But on your Google leads, the reason they're a little different beast is Facebook is like magazine or newspaper ads that are easier to respond to, right? So they're not going to Facebook looking for martial arts schools. They're looking for cute cat videos and what their friends are up to and all that kind of stuff. And all advertising on Facebook and YouTube, by the way, is what we would call interruption advertising. And it's somewhat targeted interruption advertising, but it's still interruption advertising, meaning just like you're watching TV. If you're watching your favorite show, like my favorite show on network anymore is SEAL Team. So last night, if I'm watching SEAL Team, every time the commercial comes on, I'm not happy that there's, commercials because I want to watch the show, but it's going to show it to me because that's the price of not having to pay for the show, right? So differentiate between interruption advertising that they weren't expecting. That's newspaper ad, magazine ad, TV spot, Facebook ad, etc., and unsolicited direct mail versus where they're searching you out, i.e. Google. 20 years ago, that was the Yellow Pages. Now it's Google. So they're searching out either you specifically. That means they Googled your name or something like that. Or they're looking for a martial arts school. They're in research by mode and they find you by search or by clicks, right? So the two have, what you would expect to have, different ratios that go through the pipeline, and mostly where the different ratio is from lead to appointment. Same thing with a movie theater. The reason why the show rate tends to be kind of low in a movie theater, and frankly, if you counted how many leads and how many appointments you got at a weekend in a movie theater compared to the traffic, which is a number that would be good to keep. We usually don't have an easy access to that for that particular weekend. But you might have 5,000 people come to the movie theater and only get 150 leads and only get 120 appointments. Now, that's a hell of a lot of appointments, but relative to 5,000 people coming to the movie theater, it's not necessarily that big a percentage. Does everybody understand the difference? So always keep that in mind, that it was Seth Godin who coined the term many years ago, permission marketing. The best thing to be doing always is to find a way to get. Now, the thing that leaves out is he didn't mention that almost all marketing is going to people through interruption marketing. And then once they raise their hand, you have permission, right? So you don't build a big email list mostly through permission. You build a big email list through interruption. But his thought was the entire world is moving to permission marketing, meaning marketing to people who wanted information rather than marketing to people who may or may not be interested or may not be in the market. Does that concept fit for everybody? Does it resonate? Okay. Next thing, I wanted to go through a couple of the questions that were on Facebook, and I'm looking for it now. I can't see it, but
yeah. But I wanted to mention for anybody, if you're using the chat, I know it's active. We used to disable it. I don't know how it got enabled again. But
hey, Bob, disable it.
Well, we have to do it we'll have to do it for the next call because it won't disable in the middle. But we won't notice any. Just assume we'll never ever notice anything you ever put on the chat. So we're not trying to ignore you, but we will be ignoring you because we don't notice those. We probably won't see them because we're talking about stuff. So you guys, we want you to speak up. So just like I did, feel free to speak up if you're not getting heard. We want to make sure everybody does get heard. And you may need to, if you haven't noticed, speak up a little bit, and because we're going to keep talking and keep answering your questions and everything else.
Yeah.
But we do want
And-
to questions. Those are important ways to get your questions answered, because a lot of times this time may not be when you have all your questions in your head. Sorry,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
And if you're not
No.
on video, it's hard to see you raise your hand or, let us know you have a question. So
Don't
if
raise
you
your
wanna ask
hand.
a question, try to at least have your video on.
Yeah.
Well-
Well, number one, everybody have your video on, and number two, just jump in, right?
We're not going to on video raise your hand because the gallery doesn't show everybody. So I mean, so don't raise your hand to ask a question either. Just start talking.
Yeah,
That's-
just jump in. A group of black belts, in many cases, master and grandmaster black belts. It's amazing how shy they get when it comes to a business meeting sometimes. So just jump in at any time. And by the way, if you interrupt and jump in on something that's not immediately relevant, I think we're pretty good at remembering what it is and circling, going back to it in 10 or 15 minutes to get answered. But the chat was, Jen had a question. Jen, what was it? Going once.
You're muted, Jen.
Okay, there we go. I was trying to turn my video on. Sorry.
There you go.
So we had somebody come in the other day. They came with a friend. It was like two neighbor kids that knew each other, and so they both signed up for the trial at the same time.
Yeah.
And when it came to sign them up for the full program, one of them was like gung ho, yeah, let's do this, right? Oh, there we go. Light would be helpful. So the other one said that they were moving in a few months, like in July or something.
Yeah.
And so want to throw down like 350 and then 124 every 2 weeks. Like they'd be okay with the 124 every 2 weeks, but they don't want to do the 350 because of
They're
you
moving.
know, and so is there a comeback for that, or do you just let it fly, whatever? right?
I'll give you a thought about things that are useful to discuss on the meetings. In part, I don't mean to be critical. I want everybody to ask any and every question, but those are kind of rare outlier type of things, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times we have somebody who's enrolling 75% of everybody comes in for an intro, and then they want to discuss how to fix the ones that had weird objections that didn't enroll. And all that matters is having a good closing rate. And it really doesn't matter what the other objections are. The short answer to that is give them a price for 3 months, charge them once up front, and be done with it. Right. So if they're going to move in 3 months, you're charging, $297 a month. It's $900 for 3 months. And, if you extend on beyond that, we'll look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. I always just do it that way. One payment paid in full, because from their side, yeah, I'm going to pay initial tuition, then I'm going to pay monthly, and I'm only going to be here for another 2.5 months. I can see their concern about that.
Yeah, one thing that I would add to that, Master Oliver, if you have somebody who says we might be moving, because that to me is a typical excuse not to sign the agreement, right? Well, we might be moving, so we don't want to commit for that year. Say, well, no problem. We'll go ahead and sign you up for the year, and then if you're going to move out of the area, then
we'll go ahead and enroll you on the trial enrollment.
Yeah,
and if you're going to move out, we can cancel at any time.
Yeah, I've done that one. Yeah, I know that one. That's right.
Yeah.
But this person, definitely we're moving. And so I was like,
Yeah, I completely agree with Master Smith, other than I'm beating him up about the language. Not a 12-month program. It's not signed yet, but yeah, we can, we'll go ahead and get you enrolled on the trial enrollment. And if you move in 3 months, you move in 6 months, you move in 9 months, you can cancel it at any time. In this case, if they say on July 1st, we're out of here, May, June, July, okay, it's couple $100 a month for 3 months. Let's do $900 and you're done,
Okay,
or whatever.
thank
You know, you get the idea.
Yes, thank you.
Mostly things like that aren't worth spending any time worrying about. But Master Smith's point is exactly right. Is oftentimes you get around to the agreement, and their pushback is, well, what if we move? And his response is exactly, you know, what that is. And I would say also in the pre-qualification process, I should have handled that already.
Right.
You know, we were talking about, you know, you're going to be here permanently, or you at least going to be here for 12 months. Well, you know, but my job is, you know, here we used to have a lot. Say I work with Rockwell International, and you know they might move. Okay, well if that happens, you know, we'll try to find you a school to go to, and you know your obligation with us will be canceled. Just let us know.
Our area with a lot of military.
Yeah,
And so-
Of course.
we do too in this area. I tell you, the one thing you have to be careful of is when you schedule an intro, I always ask them if they have another sibling or a friend that they want to bring with them. And then if they say, yeah, or they'll say, let me check. And I say, well, if you have, just give me a call back, because we will need their parents to come in with them, because you don't want to have that kid's friend come in and take the class and then the parent be pissed off because they didn't give you permission to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We are starting to kill a gnat with a sledgehammer, but I might add that, you know, another mistake I see made is the enrollment conference includes both families. I would never do that either, right? The one that came in, you know, that was, you know, is sure to go. The one that's not moving, enroll them first, and then the other one, enroll them, right? And every now and then you get somebody, well, you know, we're not going to enroll him if they don't enroll because, and I'd always rather try to solve the because than to rely on both of them making a decision at the same time, same place. Because too often one of them screws the deal and then they're both gone. Right.
Yeah. That's what it is. I took the sure thing first, and
Good.
that the friend signed up. And so the other one was like, well, I want to, because I want my kid to go with their friend, but we have this problem.
Yeah, you got it solved. No
Okay.
problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good enough.
Could you quickly review the terminology? So it's not a 12-month program, it's a trial program. It's not a down payment, it's initial. I want to write those down really fast again, make sure I'm not. saying the wrong thing.
And I know to some extent this is being anal retentive, but the principle is don't use terminology that puts them into a negative state. Right? And you think of generally what people don't want to do or are not happy about. I'm not happy about having another monthly payment. I'm not happy about having to pay a down payment. I'm not happy about signing a 12-month contract. Right? So the word sign up, personally, I just don't like it. In part, it sounds like signing up at the rec rather than enrolling in a college. So in the pantheon of terminology, I try to always default to admissions counselor at Harvard or West Point. What language would they use, right? You know, they wouldn't be negotiating price. They wouldn't be, you know, pay your down payment today. They wouldn't be using any of that terminology. Does that make sense? So if you take the mindset of admissions counselor at Harvard or West Point, including the take it away from you attitude, rather than the beg you to do it attitude. You know what I mean? If you ever want to see a great sales example, go to whatever the lowest end car dealership is in your town versus go to the Ferrari or the Porsche dealer. And notice the way the Porsche guy acts differently than, I've always picked on Kia. Don gets mad when I pick on Kia, but whatever, I don't know, whatever the, cheapest app Yugo, that falls apart on the boat across the ocean is. And, the guy selling the Yugo is going to be a whole different mindset, body language. I mean, the Yugo dealer basically throws you the keys, go take it for a drive, and negotiates price. And the, Ferrari dealership, you're qualified for the financing or lease before you're ever going for a ride and he's driving, right? So it's a whole different thing. But specifically to that point, I don't like the word sign up. I don't ever say the word 12 months in the enrollment process. I don't like the word contract, right? I don't like the word down payment. I would much rather it be, the initial tuition. Normally we do $800 initially. We give you a $400 discount because you came in from that $99 special, whatever it is. So it's $400 initially, and then the first month, and then the monthly tuition, of course, is the $297 a month. So it's the monthly tuition, it's the initial tuition, it's a trial enrollment. And if they say to me, "Oh, so that's 12 months," I feed it back. Absolutely, it's about a quarter of the way to black belt, or whatever it is relative to, BJJ or whatever, right? Yeah, as we discussed, about quarter way to black belt. It typically takes 3 to 4 years to get to black belt. It's a trial enrollment, and then we'll let you qualify and see if you qualify to train to black belt and beyond. You see how that language sounds different?
Just to clarify for everybody, then it's not sign up, it's enroll is the first one. The next one, it's not down payment, it's initial. You can say initial tuition. It's not monthly payment, it's monthly tuition. It's not contract, but enrollment agreement.
Enrollment agreement, exactly right. Or just a trial enrollment, depending upon context, right?
And then sign the contract. You'll never say that. You'll just, I always like to make it kind of just, if you could give me your autograph here, and I just turn it around for them to put their initial on there, and then it's that trial enrollment.
Yeah, I just say if you can okay it here.
Yeah, give me your autograph or okay this.
Yeah.
And all that's written on the, I'm trying to show you the example. You look up enrollment conference on the Facebook group. Here it is. Let me share the screen. Maybe I can share the screen. It's not letting me share the screen. Try it again. There it is. So it's here. Don't say contract, membership agreement. All those are, a lot of it comes right out of Tom Hopkins.
Exactly. Yeah, I stole a lot of that. Now he uses, if you go read the book, he uses different language, but he's in real estate, right? So, or his background was real estate. So, he says the investment, the initial investment, the monthly investment, the total investment, but, to me, that's a little different. With if we're enrolling in a school, you're paying the tuition for the program. You're not, minor change there.
Yeah,
but it's put that back for a second, Master Moody. Thank you. I'm gonna just take a picture of that, and then I'll post it on our Facebook page for everybody.
It's already in Facebook, so they just search for enrollment conference, and they can it's on page 83 of that. So that's everything in the enrollment conference.
Yeah. Get involved, enroll. If we're going to go ahead and get Joey started, let's go ahead. I mean, that kind of language. Again, a lot of it is in subliminal body language and attitude. And so, some of you have had the experience of going to highly selective university and how that works. I know, I was working on Georgetown, Stanford, and Wharton at the time. But, the interview at Georgetown was very much, nice, but you proved to us why, and I was a transfer, which made it even worse. So, you proved to us why out of 3,500 applicants for the, 22 transfer spots we have available, it should be you, right? Now, he didn't ever use those words, but the body language and everything else, and what was exactly on that mode. And that's what you want, enrollment and renewal, without looking condescending or being cocky or one thing or another. But if you know, I've put my kids into now 3 very expensive private schools, and sadly didn't have my son in one this time. And by the way, Jason, Seattle Pacific is turning my daughter into a fuzzy-headed left-wing liberal, soon-to-be communist. So I will.
That's funny.
I will.
So actually, for me, it wasn't until like 10 years after college that I went back. So yeah, she's getting started early. It's just Seattle, probably.
She was trying to tell me how, you know, white people are the only ones who can be prejudiced and a number of other things. And, you know, my skin was crawling on that one.
Let's move on from there, but that's funny.
Yeah. But, well, you know, the world has lost its mind. You have to be careful. There's a great book, Greg. I sent it to you, The Madness of Crowds. I would highly recommend Madness of Crowds.
Yeah, especially for me. I did skim through that. I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah. But anyway, moving along from there.
I would make one comment. It did sound like Jen had signed up, just as a thoroughness. She did sign them up for a trial, and it sounded like she tried to do the enrollment at the end of that trial. And there's multiple problems with that. I don't know if that was true or not, but that would also put the vector so you'd end up with both of these people at that enrollment as well. So that would cause part of this problem.
And she told us that she didn't do that specifically, but you're right. You want to not.
So the one kid I did on the second class, the other kid I did on the third.
Perfect. Yeah. Just to remove the dynamic of they're both trying to walk in the office with you at the same time.
Yes.
Textbook.
I try not to do 2 at once. Not because of anything you guys have said. It just feels weird to me. Like it feels like there's a higher chance of failure.
There is. You know, we've had people who, the gurus in the industry have taught this, group intro, group enrollment type of stuff. And although oftentimes what they're talking about as an enrollment is really selling them a trial, paid trial. So it really isn't a group enrollment. It's a group sell them a trial program. But in any and all, if you want to use the word sales, in any all sales situations, face-to-face, one-on-one, private is going to have a better closing rate than face-to-face standing at the front counter. And that's going to have a higher closing rate than 3 people at once or 30 people at once. Especially interactive, because you almost always in a group setting have somebody bring up an objection that the ones who were ready to enroll never thought about, or now they want to go home and think about that because it never came to their mind. But moving along from there, the question I was trying to find here, and let me remind everybody. One, of course, make sure you're coming to Keystone. It'll be very valuable. With any luck, Colorado and the rest of the country is opening up a lot more. The number I heard recently is well over 100 million adults, including Master Moody, Master Smith, and myself, have been vaccinated. So we're starting to get there. Master Smith, you've had your first, and Master Moody and I have had both, right? So.
Yeah, I get my second in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I must say, Joe Corley being in the hospital for 10 days reframed you a bit on that whole thing.
It did.
Yeah, and good. But
Who's going to wait till see everybody else got their shot, and if they didn't have all the bad reactions, then I was going to do it.
Well, we know. And by the way, the worst thing they did is pull Johnson & Johnson off the shelf, because the likelihood of bad reactions from COVID are much higher than the 5 in whatever it was, a million that they had from the vaccine. So it was absolutely crazy. And by the way, I saw a study which is interesting. Is
Dude, I think it's hilarious that 5 in a million was a problem, but for birth control, women have a higher chance of having a blood clot from birth control than from that Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can go through any number of lists. The real relevant one is like a 20 time higher likelihood of a blood clot with COVID. And essentially, I don't know what the Johnson Johnson vaccine is, but
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
more apples to apples comparison than.
yeah, exactly. But it's interesting. There's been two studies recently, which I think are relevant for everybody to look at. Look at the New York Times article on the survey that they did on belief systems around COVID, and it's again, I mean, this isn't a conservative publication by any means, but they did. New York Times did a survey, and in fact, there's a little clip that Bill Maher did, who's again no conservative by any stretch of the imagination, ranting about this. But something like 75% of people who are Democrats wildly overestimate the probability of being hospitalized by COVID. The actual number is between 1 and 5%, and something like 75% of Democrats guesstimate anywhere from 35 to 50%. So it's an interesting survey. And I would recommend the Bill Maher rant also, but look at the real numbers that were published in the New York Times. But what I was saying is there was a survey, which I bring this up because it's relevant to how your students are thinking about it, what your general population is thinking about it, and how you address this stuff, right? See, we don't want to go, if you're in a state and they drop the mask mandate and all that stuff, make it optional for business. I would be very hesitant to be like back to normal. What I would want to be is still checking temperatures, hand sanitizer, have them wash their hands, mask in class as long as it's indoors. Wearing them outdoors is stupid, but wearing them indoors. Go through the checklist, because again, what we're concerned with in the kids is the soccer moms feeling 100% comfortable. And I'm I'm not hypersensitive about any of this stuff, but in the fall, I was taking my son Chase to classes at his kids program at his church on Sunday nights, and I wasn't comfortable with what they were doing. And if I'm not comfortable, because I'm not very hypersensitive about this stuff, especially for kids. I do worry about him because he was, been in the emergency room now 4 times in his life, twice of them just a few months ago for asthma. But, if they were doing things that I'm uncomfortable with, there were an awful lot more parents who weren't showing up or showed up once because they were uncomfortable. So I think it's important to take your own belief system out of it, no matter which extreme it might be, and recognize that we want to do things where, I was saying before, it's going to be like 25% on one end, 25% on the other end. In Colorado, it's become more like 95-5. 95% of the students are back in class, like 5% aren't. However, my argument might be we tend to attract perhaps a little bit more conservative crowd, possibly. The survey I was going to say on the Johnson & Johnson thing, though, was I don't remember the numbers. I heard it in passing, but a big percent of Democrats had more confidence in the system by them pulling the vaccine, and a big percent of Republicans, which sadly somehow has become more of the anti-vaxxers, had dramatically less confidence after that. Now, you could extrapolate from that. The ones who were most likely to go get the vaccine already suddenly had more confidence, but they were going to get it anyway. And the ones who were like standoffish about it, perhaps like Master Smith, it lowered their confidence. So I still say it was a really stupid thing to have done. But anyway, moving along, the question I'm trying to find, I think was from Gustavo, and I don't see him on the meeting, but hopefully he'll pick up the recording here. But it was more or less, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm doing this from memory from yesterday, but it was more or less, my program directors are getting burnt out, and I'm thinking about hiring an office person during the day. And there was kind of a checklist of what he was thinking about having the quote unquote office person do. which included doing outbound calls to Facebook leads, but also included, I believe, a number of administrative things. Something we haven't talked about in quite a long time on these quick start meetings, but we talked about this a little bit with our multi-level people, and in general, they're all pretty good about this. But let's hit a couple of things, and I'm just going to give you some checklists on things like this, and you might just kind of make notes. But one checklist is, and you've heard us say this a number of times, nobody leaves the school until everything that has to be done is done, so that there's nothing that has to be done the next morning at the school. What do I mean by that? If you have mirrors, the mirrors have been cleaned. The fingerprints are off the front door. The school has been vacuumed or mopped. The bathrooms are clean. The toilet paper is being replenished. As long as I'm on that topic, the two best things I ever did in my life were put the electric eye on the signs and get those big industrial sized toilet paper holders that have like a month's supply on each roll. And if one rolls out, they can use the other. I'm barely, well, and the third was Century doing Century Direct. So I never had to touch retail again, which I helped talk them into at the time. But there's things that the reason I say that is, every time I drove up to one of my schools at 7 o'clock at night, the light was off, and some numbnuts had always turned off the switch because when it was on the timer box, if you turned off the switch, suddenly it was coming on at noon and shutting off at 6, and wasn't on from 5 through the night. So the electric eye fixed that. But it's when you're running a big operations, it's all those little pieces that make a difference. Does that make sense? So you don't leave before at the end of the night until all the ID cards have been marked and refiled. If you're going to scan them into somebody's software, fine. It's been marked, scanned, refiled. You don't leave at the end of the night till every piece of paper that was generated that night have been dealt with, right? That certainly means that any appointments coming up in the next few days were already put in the appointment book, however you're handling it, whether it's Google Calendar or whether you're keeping a book at the school and then you're putting it into iCal or whatever. But every appointment that was made, I deal with as I go, because I know if it was me or one of my program directors, they can reschedule an intro at 5:30 at night, and at 9 o'clock, they don't have a clue, or put them down on the wrong day, right? So all the appointments have been rescheduled. ID cards have been filed. The school is spotless. Everything I need to do with deal with the new enrollment contract has been dealt with. And so if I'm using software for that, I've data entered everything, or a billing company, I've data entered. For years, we faxed them in. So at the end of the night, we would fax them and then stamp them what date they were faxed. And then what we would do on the first of the month is we would make sure they had all showed up and gotten the first bill date. But so everything is done at the end of the night. So there's no such thing as like paperwork that needs to be handled the next day. Does that make sense? And there's also no such thing as I got to go in and I got to vacuum and I got to mop and I've got to do all that kind of stuff, right? And what happens with staff is if they can't leave until all that stuff is done, it gets done in a damn hurry. If they come in tomorrow to do it, stretches out for 5 hours. Okay? So there's a real big difference in, we wrapped up, and maybe the program director wrapped up the last thing they had to do at 8, and there's no more calls to make. So they get everything knocked out from 8 to 9. Then the instructor's done at 9. Then everybody cleans the school, and then we're out of there. Well, and I shouldn't forget our little 15-minute recap. We've gotten everybody together and had a little recap on everything going on. Because if I don't do that recap, I don't remember the conversations that were had on renewal prep. I don't remember the conversations had on renewals. I don't remember the conversations had on enrollments, renewals, intros, et cetera. Does that make sense for everybody? So sometimes it falls apart because you don't force the staff to have a little 15-minute recap and everybody share. I had this conversation with Mrs. Jones. They said they're going to be out of town next week. I had this conversation with Mr. Smith. Joey's having some growing pains. His knees have been hurting a little bit. And we're, going to the doc to kind of work on that. But to be aware, all those kind of important little conversations don't get shared. And if everybody doesn't know about those conversations, then problems happen, right? But the other element, going back to that question that was asked, is anything that can be done once a year rather than once a month, do it once a year. Anything that can be done once a month, not once a week, do it once a month. Anything that can be done once a week, not daily, do it once a week, right? Now, what we know is ID cards, keeping track of the stats, sharing information about what's going on, making sure the school is spotless. That's every night. But
Oliver, could I just
go ahead.
interject?
Yeah.
Built into what he's saying is all that stuff that's done at the end of the day, that admin stuff and the cleanup, built into what he's saying is it's not done at noon. So it's not like, you make sure it's all done. Yes, that's part of it, but it's also pushed until the end of the day so that marketing is the only thing that gets done from waking up in the morning till like 3 or 4 o'clock. So that we talk to so many people that they say, oh, I just don't have time to do the marketing. I don't have time to do. Well, why? Well, if all the admin stuff gets pushed to later, your staff's going to get it done. You're going to get it done. If you're a one-person show, you're going to get it done really fast. You're going to get it cleaned up. You're going to get the paperwork done. You're going to get stuff in the computer. You're going to probably throw out stuff you really don't need to get done. You're going to get everything done fast. But if you come in at 8 a.m. and start doing that stuff, you'll take 6 hours to do the stuff that would have taken you an hour. It's human nature. It's human nature to expand tasks to
The
fit
time allotted.
time allotted. And if you come in at 8 to do it, you'll goof around. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're slow. It's not, but I guarantee you, if you don't start that until the end of the day, you'll start getting good at finishing it quick because you want to go home.
Right.
But-
even if it's you doing it as the owner.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So built into what's going on there is admin, really simple. From morning till 3 or 4, when you start classes, maybe the little bit of the prep before classes to get ready, marketing. Then it's prime time, sales and instruction until 7:30, 8 o'clock or whenever that. And then at that point, maybe late in the adult class, we start a little bit of the wrap up, start counting the cards, do all the stuff. Then the admin starts, you're done and you count your money and everything's done.
Yeah.
If you follow that pattern, there's no reason not to have plenty of time for marketing. And all the flags that are coming up in your head, oh yeah, but I got to do accounting. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do. No, that's all at the end. And you'll become really efficient at work. Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but I want to make sure
No,
that
absolutely.
clear how that pattern works. And if you do that, you're going to be in great shape.
Yeah. And then on the batching piece of it, right, is I always prefer for the billing to hit like once a month, right? If I had my preference, depending upon how I'm getting the money out and so forth, but, generally I like to have the billing, if I tell people it's the first of the month, really I'm going to set it up on the 25th. So all the billing now, if you're using like simple tuition management or whatever, if all the billing hits on the 25th, then I know I have 2 things that need to be batched on the 1st. One that needs to be batched on the 1st is all the bills get paid. And I'm talking about human beings, rent, utilities, phone bill, everything. And for me, anything that can be set up automatic, whether my account sends it to them or they just pull it out, I do it automatic. And if they have a billing date of the 18th of the month, I tell them it's going to be paid on the 1st. And in almost all cases, they'll just move the billing date and deal with it. And if you have like some big bureaucratic company, like maybe utilities, that won't do that, well, okay, just pay, start paying it on the 1st. And it's not going to matter anyway. And what I would be doing is I'd be paying it early, not late, probably. But truthfully, I mean, nowadays I write 1 check a month, and that's to the lady who cleans my house. Everything else is automatic, and none of it requires me to look at it. And if it's like buying equipment and stuff, like buying from Century or whatever, I just always had the credit card set up. They hit the credit card, they drop ship. I don't pay any attention to it. At the end of the month, what's the balance of the credit card, pay it off, and we're done, right? And if the credit card company will automatically feed it in and I can set up automatically to, to zero out the balance. I set it that way. Right. But the reason for the billing thing is I want to have a day of the month that I know it didn't go through. And it's been a few days where any automated system or whatever has allowed them to update their credit card themselves and whatever. And long enough that it was an ACH that didn't clear, I know about it. But I want to have a day that I know we have to go and look and find out whose billing didn't go through, what credit cards we need to get replaced, what checking accounts need to be updated, and who we have in there who's inactive, whose billing also now failed. Although my panic should have been they were inactive, not that they stopped paying, right? And by the way, on that example, I'm going to call them about getting into class. I'm not going to have any conversation about, the billing. And then once they're back in class and they're happy and they're good, we can fix it then, right? And if that's 30 days, 90 days, I don't care. I just want to get them solid as a student. So service always leads money, doesn't follow money, right? Is this making sense for everybody? And then you have other stuff you have to do oftentimes that you don't have any choice. If you're selling any kind of retail, and some of you have to charge sales tax on tuition even, well, certainly Canada does. It's not called sales tax. It's called value added tax or whatever, that. But if you can do all that stuff quarterly rather than monthly, or you can do it once a year rather than quarterly, you're great. And I'm so anal retentive about this. I actually had a big fight with the city of Lakewood because I figured out that we were spending more money on completing the sales tax form that they wanted weekly, when all of the other cities, this was the 6 schools, every other city, every other county, the state all required it quarterly, and they wanted it monthly. And I was only sending them, a couple $100 a quarter. So I just started doing it quarterly and sending them the money quarterly, all the way to the point that they subpoenaed me, drugged me into court, and I lost that one. And I didn't want handcuffs, but I just thought it was ridiculous that I had to spend $1,000 in accounting time and my time to fill out a report to give them $200, which of course is just typical government bureaucracy and craziness. But I'm that anal retentive about it that if it can be done quarterly, I'll do it quarterly. If it can be done once a year, I'll do it once a year. And the mistake, and I want to drill it in again, the mistake people make on trying to keep good numbers is they try to organize their numbers at the end of the week or organize their numbers at the end of the month, rather than just getting the numbers right by the end of the evening and keeping them right as leads and appointments come in. So that's one of those things that you can't push off and batch. You've got to have your stats up to date every day. Is this all making sense so far? The other question that was buried into Gustavo's question is, Amanda posted a really cute picture of a kid holding the letter that came from the school with the invitation to leadership or black belt training or whatever. One of the things we have to not forget is the more of that kind of stuff we do for the students, just to make a sale, but birthday stuff, recognition, congratulations on testing. Junior Institute used to be really good of everybody. Every time they tested, they got a letter that went out that was signed by Junior. I mean, I don't know how many millions of those he signed over the years. And of course, now you can print that stuff and it looks like it's a real signature, if you need to by volume. All of that stuff is really useful. Now, in today's day and age, though, an awful lot of that can be automated, right? I can automate to send everybody in the school what looks like a note with their name in it and their belt rank in it, congratulating them on the latest test. Should I do that? Yes. Do I need to spend 5 man hours doing that in the school? No. So there's all kinds of things that Amanda Olson, and I recommend it for everybody, has, what the Kennedy Glazer group would call shock and awe box. So a big box of, coffee mug and information about the school, t-shirt and hat. Well, they spend quite a bit of time stuffing that. Well, I can go to a fulfillment house. There's a number of them. We use a company called McManus in Wichita. We do that stuff all the time, but I just send them an email and they put all the stuff in the box. And anytime we have to resupply anything in the box, whoever is doing the supplies just drop ships it to them. Never have to touch it. They inventory it. They put it in the box, and it doesn't require any of our staff time, right? So when you look at your time and you look at staff time, the question is, what can be automated? What can be outsourced? And what can be eliminated? Is this making sense for everybody so far? Master Marie, let's talk about the elimination piece of it. I see schools that, you walk in, there's a big file cabinet. And I say, what's that? Well, that's all of our student files. And my first question is, why the hell do you have student files? And especially in today's day and age. But they're like, what do you mean? Well, pull one out for me. Well, and now what they have is they have the Gold Belt test papers that were filled out. They have all the stripe and the character development sheets, and they have all this different stuff. Here's my question. Do you need any of that? So our process, take all the character development sheets, test, feedback sheets you're going to do for the testing, all of that stuff. What our solution is the student has a notebook. They hand the sheet out. They hand out to the instructor. The instructor gives them the stripe, hands it back in, goes in their notebook. Then if they need it 2 or 3 months later, if it's a black belt, they need the black belts have a notebook like this. If they need it, then what happens is they bring their notebook, and it's their responsibility to keep track of all that stuff, right? I don't need any of that stuff ever again. Is that making sense? The contracts. If you're doing a physical contract, some people are doing like on an iPad and stuff. We've recently started using DocuSign. I was hesitant to do it forever. But if you're using a physical agreement, have one of those neat little scanning machines sitting next to your computer, and they fill out the agreement, you scan it, you have a file in your computer somewhere, make sure it's cloud backed up, and then shred it. Why do you need the paper? Before it was that easy and that cheap to do it. I filed all of I learned a long time ago, I filed all of our agreements chronologically. Everybody know what I mean by that? I had a stack on the shelf, and the next new one came in and went on top. So they were filed chronologically. So the January ones were on the bottom. The April ones were on the top. The February ones were about 2/3 of the way down, and the March ones were about 1/3 of the way down. And at the end of every year, I took that stack and put it in a drawer somewhere. And then I did the same thing, because the stack would get too high and it would fall over. And, and by the way, what you have with agreements that people sign, probably 1 out of 1,000 you're ever going to need to find the signed agreement again. It's a very small percentage that are ever going to be an issue, right? I think the only time I went and searched for one was, the one person who sued us many years ago when Charlie Lee was teaching a class and they popped their knee. I went and found their agreement, so I had the signed waiver to give to the insurance company. But, other than that, it's very rare. Every now and then somebody's, wasn't clear on the payments or something, and you have to go pull it out, I guess. But other than that, it's just not a big deal. Questions on all of that? So, my thought is, one, what's an office person going to do? Automate, eliminate, finish it at the end of the day. And the one that in Gustavo's question that was absolutely legitimate is you've got to figure out a way that all lead traffic online is going to get responded to in 30 seconds. And you have to figure out a way that all incoming info calls are going to be answered live by a person, not a machine, right? And truth be told, on incoming info calls, my rule of thumb forever was we're going to answer the phone live 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. It goes to a live answering service that has our script and tries to make an appointment. At the very least, they get contact information, and nothing ever goes to voicemail. Underline that, nothing ever goes to voicemail. Because what people do with voicemails, they hang up. What people do with calls coming to them that they don't recognize is not answer them. Okay, let me take a breath. Master Smith, anything to add to that? You're muted.
He actually had 3 different posts on 3 different questions, but you answered most of the longest one, except at the bottom. You know, he was, because he has 3 schools, he was feeling his program directors were overworked, and you kind of covered that issue. But, and then he said at the end, and it could be, he shouldn't be in that problem anyway, but if he is, he said he's struggling to get qualified people to even apply. And he said, is there an ad that you use? And should he consider a virtual assistant?
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that for a second. Is, you know, Peter Harness that you guys have mostly met. He also is part owner in a couple of restaurants. And every restaurant that I know of in Colorado, certainly in the Denver metro area, cannot hire people. They're having great difficulty hiring staff. And I see reports of this all over the country for one and only one reason, is they're being paid more to stay home than they're being paid to work. And so there is some portion of the dynamic that people are still afraid to be out, you know, in the middle of COVID. And another portion of the dynamic is, you know, they get the stimulus check, they're getting paid more on a weekly basis than they were making before, because what is it, another $300 a month on top of the normal weekly unemployment. So that is, in my view, probably 3 or 4 points, worst case 2 or 3 points of the percentage of people who are still unemployed. I was having dinner in on my birthday, I was having dinner in my favorite steakhouse and Chase's favorite steakhouse called Sims Landing, which is part of Landry's. And this is like a, you know, 3 people, $300 dinner. But the waitress and the host all said the same thing. They said, "Oh yeah, we're really short-staffed, and we're advertising a lot for people. But what happens is we get a lot of applications, and they never show up for the interview." Well, why don't they show up for the interview? Because they got to show that they applied for work and didn't get work in order to stay on unemployment. But then they really didn't want the job, and you know, and fear of fears, I come in for the interview and they hire me. You know, it screws with the system. So it's certainly true right now that because of the way of the unintended consequences of what the federal and state governments have done, is it's difficult to hire people. By the way, make a note of that anytime you want the government to help you out. So the first answer that we would always have to that question is always look internally first, right? From my perspective, probably he needs to restructure and slap around the program directors because they're whining, rather than he needs to hire another person to help them out. So that's probably the problem. You do have to legitimately have 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. covered for incoming calls. There's a lot of ways to do that. Sometimes it's, you know, Joe handles it every Monday, Sue handles it every Tuesday, Bill handles it every Wednesday, Joan handles it every Thursday, right? Whatever it might be. In this case, he has 2 schools, so presumably 4 or 5 full-timers. 3 full-timers?
3 schools, yes.
Oh, that's right. 3rd one open. So now you got 6 full-timers. I have always had it be where, you know, out of 6 schools, 1 school can handle the calls for everybody. I've always had the intro times be times when everybody was on the same. So the guy running the Lakewood school could schedule an appointment for Aurora. And by the way, I would frequently secret shop them and record it. We actually caught one of my program directors one time saying, "Oh no, you've called the Lakewood location. That's the Aurora location. They'll be there, by 3:30 or 4."
Oh, God.
Yeah, call back after then.
And by the way, it was recorded. And what I would do is, every couple of months I would go to the meeting and play the recordings for everybody. And when that one come up, I didn't have to say a thing. Can you imagine the peer pressure of like 15 people in the room nuts because he was, doing bag work when he was supposed to be covering the phones, lost an info call?
Yeah, the peer pressure from the school that he told was going to come in later and he didn't take care of the info call. That's
Match him up to spar later.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what we always do after our meetings as we work out. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, his other question in that same post was about should he hire an assistant virtually? And of course, I don't think that would work at all.
Well, I think there's a more complicated answer than that. On that note, there's a book that's interesting. I consider it about a 1/3 priceless and about 1/3 silly and about 1/3, kind of interesting, is Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And his whole premise, batching, eliminating clutter, eliminating constant contact, and outsourcing anything that could be outsourced, right? Including to virtual assistants. And all a virtual assistant means is you have somebody full-time or part-time that isn't physically at your business, right? So we recommend a virtual assistant, in practice of using Elite Digital, AKA linked selling now. We recommend essentially a virtual assistant by making sure you hire an accountant that's doing your stuff externally, hiring a bookkeeper that's doing your stuff externally. In practical lexicon, what a lot of people mean is hiring somebody in the Philippines who's going to do stuff for you at a lower wage, right? Which, by the way, in many instances works just fine. Let me give you an example of things, Matt Smith, that we've done that work just fine. We had a client years ago who had a really big operation in Brooklyn and that area. I think 5 locations, but they had none of their prospects in an Excel spreadsheet and software anywhere. They had them all on pieces of paper stacked in the corner. So we went to, nowadays you'd go to Fiverr or Upwork, but we went to whatever at the time and hired a virtual assistant in India or the Philippines, put the stuff, made a copy of everything, put it in a box, and they data entered it for like a dime a name. Now that's a really good use of a virtual assistant, right? So there's, the other example I was going to use of essentially a virtual assistant, although it's not the way that some people think about it, is Pat Live, we recommend, which is a live answering service that's direct response oriented that you can use for your phones from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. We were working with them a lot, and we should again, but my concern at the time was we had people who were using them 24 hours a day, or they were using them from 9 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that's a huge mistake because they're never any outsourced answering source, including a virtual assistant, is never going to be as good as you are or your staff is on fielding incoming traffic. So the question is, Master Smith, on that one is always to do what, right?
Automate.
Yeah, if I have 500 leads to data enter, yeah, I'll find somebody cheap who will do that for me, even if I have to ship it internationally to do that. Or, frankly, you just scan it and email them a file, right? We did that meeting a couple weeks ago or last week, I guess, on direct mail, and we just outsourced getting it transcribed. I guarantee Rev.com is using somebody in the Philippines or something like that to do it, but we outsourced it to somebody to transcribe, clean it up, make it readable, because we're going to make it in a more readable form available to everybody, and have that content where it's on demand for all of you guys. So there's all kinds of different reasons. Now, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., do I want the virtual assistant to be fielding incoming info calls? No. Do I want the virtual assistant to be doing outbound calls to Facebook leads? I would prefer not. I know Elite Digital actually offers that service on Facebook leads, except that in most cases, well, in all cases, they're not going to know your service as well as you do. But in most cases, they're not going to be responding in 30 seconds, right? So it makes it more difficult. Questions on all of that? I mean, that was a lot of stuff we've covered, but we've got about, go ahead.
What is your optimal schedule for the program director? If it's a full-time person, just to get all the admin stuff done and the clients during business school hours.
Okay, now you confused me with that last statement.
So yeah. So right now we're working a 6-day work week. I know on Mondays I'm coming in late just during school hours when classes are going to sign people up. And then I have pretty much noon to end of business, which is like 8:30. So it's 8-hour days mostly. And then Saturday mornings is my other split during school hours. So is that optimal, do you think? Or do you think that there could be a tweak there to make it more productive?
Master, why don't you go first? I have some thoughts, but I'm sure he's.
Well, what I find there's an optimal and there's reality. What ends up happening in most cases, you end up with somebody that we work. There's a little bit of flexibility there. I generally I have staff meetings Mondays and Thursdays. So Monday at 7:55. We have our Monday staff meeting, and we do our staff meeting, and then we do a workout right afterwards. So that's in violation.
Just to clarify for everybody.
I'm sorry, sir.
I have no idea what you just said.
That is AM, just to clarify for everybody.
Yeah.
AM. So we do the meeting, and then we work out, and then Thursday we do a meeting, and we work out. We do that one an hour later, and so that's. No matter what, that happens. And so because somebody's a program director, or somebody was a whatever, doesn't matter what they are, they still do the staff meeting and the workout. So there's nobody that doesn't do the workout. And the workouts, training and instructor training all together, and they do no matter what. It doesn't matter what they are. So everybody has to do that. And then on those days, they'll come in later, because they were coming in earlier, so they get a break, and then they come in later. So they might come in like at 2, and then the other days they'll come in like at 11 or 12.
Okay, so Master, let me answer that question in a different way. Okay, forget about the concept of a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's long gone.
Yeah. Forget about the concept of keeping track of it, and for staff, all of the employees, never have somebody clock in, clock out, all of that crap. If I have a part-timer, I have them keep track of it themselves. I put them on a schedule. They give it to me. I'm not nitpicking it, but I don't have a time clock or something, or I don't have some software where they're clocking in and clocking out, right? But what I tell them is you're working 20 hours a week, or you're working 15 hours a week, and here's your schedule, and give it to me. If you give it to me on the 25th, you get paid on the 1st. If you give it to me on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, you get paid next month, right? And that's something I didn't say, by the way, is everybody should be running payroll once a month, not twice a month. And for God's sake, don't do weekly. So everybody gets paid on the first. Billing comes in on the first, everybody gets paid. But the first thing I would say, I always found a much more productive schedule was working at say 9 a.m. to noon, taking a long lunch, go work out or something like that, and then go back to the school at 3 o'clock. The reason I say that, and this is when I would run a school, I would work on marketing, from whenever I got up, which let's say at 9 a.m. and somewhere around 1 o'clock, I would take a couple hour break, which might be go work out. It might be go have a long lunch. If I was really stressed out for some other reason, I might at 12:30 go to a movie and then go back to school, right? But what I wanted to do was separate my marketing time from my sales time in the school, and separate, anything that might put me in a bad mood from closing a sale. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah. So with my staff, it was very similar to what Master Moody said is, now I'm not a morning person. So we would do our staff meeting from 10 to 1 on Monday. And then we ended up with some college students I wanted to have. So we'd do a staff meeting from 10 to midnight on Wednesday, 10 p.m. to midnight on Wednesday. And then we would have a black belt class every Friday, which to a great extent was a disguised teacher training class as well, right? So we did 3 hours on Friday night. We did either Wednesday morning or Wednesday night, depending upon if I had some college students. And then we did Monday morning. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, everybody's expected to be marketing. But truthfully, you'll have some weeks where you work 60 hours a week and some weeks you work 30 hours a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have in the event days, which are coming back pretty quickly, Godzilla versus what's his name, King Kong did pretty well. Matt Smith loves that movie. I hated that movie. My son loved the movie. So that reinforces my comment I've been making about you, Master Smith. But
say I loved it. I just said it was the best of those.
Yeah,
I didn't like
you have pandemic ratings. You moved the
my
1 to
stars
10
went down.
Yeah, if it's a 5, it's been adjusted to a 10 in the pandemic. But literally, there will be weeks when you got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you're out there all day and all of that kind of stuff. And then there will be weeks where you spend a couple hours on Tuesday morning lining stuff up for the week, and otherwise you're in good shape. And once
visiting a school, when we had those more live events, there was more of that. You were either setting it up in the morning or you were doing it in the morning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which by the way, by August, we're going to be back to, live school events in all likelihood, almost everywhere. And by Christmas, Thanksgiving to Christmas, it's going to be a blockbuster holiday season because they've held now almost 18 months worth of blockbusters to release. So you've got everything from Top Gun to Black Widow and, all kinds of other stuff coming out. Now I believe all in the Thanksgiving to Christmas. So I think that's a more realistic reality is I always sat down with a new person hiring and had the conversation that way. Right. Now, if it's somebody who works in my office and they're covering phones during the day and I can put them on 9 to 5, that's fine. But if it's a full timer, the conversation was, this is a little bit of an erratic work schedule. Forget this 40-hour week stuff. You're on incentive pay, so you're making a percentage of what you're doing. And there will be some weeks you work 30 hours and there will be some weeks you work 80 hours. And you've just got to know, like if we're doing PE teacher for the day or after school programs, and I've done a ton of this stuff myself, I would be at elementary school from 7 a.m. to 3 o'clock, hit the drive-through on the way back to the school to be there by 3:30. Sometimes I had somebody starting the first class in my absence and then running the school all night and then do it again for 4 days straight. Well, that's part of the job, but it's not part of the job every week. That might be, then that was like once a month. So I might have a week a month that was real intense, and I might have 3 weeks that were intense from 3 to 9, but not all that other stuff. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I really like what you do with the payroll, because I know sometimes, like every 2 weeks, I'm spending 3 hours adjusting payroll.
Yeah.
That's 6 hours a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Once a month, all that stuff's done.
And if
Pay-
you just
pay-
amount of time once a month as you do every week, so you're eliminating a ton of work.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would argue you probably spend 2/3 of the time, because just getting into the project and working on it is time consuming, at least mentally. So when you batch it, usually you cut probably 20 or 30% of the total hours invested, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one suggestion I would make on the payroll, because the full-time are a little easier to figure out, but your part-timers were always the ones that were giving me all the headaches. So what I always did is they had set hours per week. I knew exactly how many hours they were supposed to work, and that's what they got paid on the first. Now, they turned in their hours on the first, and if it was less or more, then I would make the adjustment on the next paycheck.
Yeah.
Got
You're too nice. If
Yeah.
they didn't turn in their hours, they didn't get paid. If they turned in their hours, they got paid. And if they didn't get their hours turned in on time, they're going to get paid on the first of the next month. And so I'll pay them on the March hours and the April hours on
I
May
didn't even
1st.
want to have to calculate it. The calculation was, I already knew what it was, so I knew what the amount of the check was going to be, so they were already cut. And
Yeah.
then,
Now I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
and then I just made an adjustment next time if needed. So it was very seldom that I had to make an adjustment. Sometimes it was 1 or 2 hours short or 1 or 2 more. If it was more, I'd pay them. If it was short, I'd just forget it.
Yeah. 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 And by the way, that's the attitude to take. If it's going to be in their favor and it's rounding error, whatever, never nitpick. And if it's going to be in their favor, go with the number that's in their favor. If you want to know one principle of maintaining good relationships is don't quibble over pennies or dollars. And that's always the way I look at it. If it's an error in my favor, I'm going to make sure that I make it good. And if it's an error in their favor, I'm going to make it good. You know what I mean? So I see a lot of people nitpicking. Well, you say you worked for an hour on Tuesday, but really, I remember you were 20 minutes late and da, 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 da. Well, I'll deal with being late, but I'm not going to nitpick on hours. Bob, is that a fair assessment in dealing with me now for 15 years?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he does. Tell me how much it is, and I'm going to pay it. And have I ever questioned anything you gave me?
Nope. Never have. No.
Although I have, this month I sent your payroll to Merrick instead of you. But other than that,
That's because Bob was using Merrick so much this month.
no, that's because I broke my own rule of never multitask. Never multitasking. I broke my own rule and screwed up twice.
And,
One of them.
and we're at 3:30, and I know we got to take off. The last question we can just answer it in the Facebook page. He just said, "What was the best copy for text follow up on prospects?"
Let's answer that really quickly and
Okay.
perhaps not very comprehensively. Everybody knows what he's talking about. If you have a lead come in from Facebook, we want to automate a text goes to the prospect and a text goes to whoever's supposed to be doing the outbound call. The reason for a text, in addition to an email, is that the person doing the outbound call might get the email in an hour and they will get the text immediately, at least so far, right? Same thing, we want to automate the outbound text so that they see the text while they're on the page, not they see the text this afternoon when they, read their email, right? But what he's asking is, what should the text messages say? So let's think about this. People like to deal with humans. They're apathetic about dealing with companies. You get all the kind of same notices that I do, I'm sure. I have I don't know now, Jeff, what do I have? 8 cell phones through AT&T, wireless. And, you know, I have checking accounts at Wells Fargo, Chase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of the emails and notices they send, do you ever get a warm and fuzzy feeling about any of that stuff?
None.
No. And even if it's something you want to see, it's annoying, right? At the very least. So anything that you send automated should sound personal, and it should sound like you did it right then and there specifically for them. The one app that we recommend a fair amount is Call Loop. And just recently, by the way, they added where it texts from a real phone number, not from a short code. Now, the mistake, you know, the gap is that it does send the little opt-out deal on the thing. But at least it's coming from a real number, not a short code. You guys all know, you get a phone call from an 800 number, probably a solicitation. You don't need to deal with it. If you get a text from a short code, it's a commercial text, right? So what I want is I want it coming from a real phone number, and I want it to be, "Hi, Susan. This is Steve Oliver down at Mile High Karate. I noticed you were requesting some information. I just tried calling you, went to voicemail. I'm available right now. Here's our phone number. If you want to give me a call or just respond and let me know a good time that we can schedule an appointment, I can answer any questions that you have." Right? And then the subsequent texts all have that kind of tone. "Hi, I've been missing you. We've been playing phone tag. I'm going to be available from this time to this time today. If you can give me a call, I'll answer any questions, or text me back and let me know. By the way, if you want to just schedule the first class to come in, here's the appointment link." Now, on the first one, and if subsequently, I'm going to also send them the V card. So it would say, "And by the way, I know nowadays you get a number you don't recognize and so forth. Add our contact record to your phone. That way you'll have the number to call us. We'll have the number to, you'll know that it's us calling you in a white label or white list." In fact, I just sent, Jeff, I just went to Crown and Caliber looking at Panerais, and they sent me they said, "Opt in here for $150 discount." And then when you opt in there, they sent you an immediate text message that said, "Here's our contact record. Put that in your record so that you won't miss anything from us."
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I think they shouldn't say V card, because a lot of people don't know what V card is. Just say, "Put my contact information in your phone," so then you know it's me when we're calling.
Well, yeah, they didn't say V card. They said the contact record, and that's what I just did.
Yeah.
The
The other thing, when I return like a text, I try to make it sound like I'm calling them. You know, "Hi, Susan. Thanks for your interest. Sorry I missed you." You know, how you would on a phone call. You know, I'd love to answer your questions and get a little more information, give you a little more information about the benefits of our program. Give me a call. Here's my text. I'm available now. Give me a time, you know, that kind of contact. But, you know, "Thanks for your interest. And I'd like to answer any of your questions about the benefits or give you more information about the benefits of our program." So it's just almost like when you're doing a regular phone call on somebody.
So on that, when you send them the text, and saying, "This is my contact information," I shouldn't say Family Black Belt Academy. I should say Jason.
Yeah. And you could say,
Jason and
and you
David
could say,
family.
you could say Jason Purcell, Family Black Belt Academy.
Yeah.
Right. Or, the way mine was is this is Stephen Oliver at Mile High Karate. I noticed that you, requesting information. Now, going back to his question on subsequent texts, let's say 5 hours later, "Hey, I noticed we still haven't connected. I'm going to be here from 3 to 9. If you want to give me a call. By the way, I've attached a short video that might give you a little bit more information about the school. And here's a link if you want to make an appointment for your first free class." And then it can go progressively into sending them little video clips. Video clips are really nice on an iPhone or an Android. Sending them little video clips, testimonials, background in the school, one thing or another, all of it sounding really personal, right? We've done a lot. You've seen some of it where we actually went to Fiverr and got a voice spokesmodel and had her do videos that were in the landing pages and so forth, had her do voicemails that were for the outbound calls, had her do recordings for the inbound calls. You can do all of those things. It needs to be personal, not corporate. And it needs to be, I'm trying to help you, give me a call. And you do that repetitiously on all of that. Jen, did you have a last question?
Yeah, I did actually. So it's kind of, I'm glad Georgette brought this up about the work week and about, my question was less about pay and more about, scheduled work days. Right. So I get that, like, there may be times of crisis or times where full-time management type, positions might have to, work extra because there's something happened, it's an emergency, whatever. Right. But how sustainable is that? Like, how long would you keep somebody working 6 days a week?
Forever.
Is that
Forever.
really?
Forever. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, in reality, is on our schedule, Friday was always a really light day, right? So Friday is a difficult time to walk into an elementary school and set up something. They just mindset. They tend to be not very focused on it. So in practical terms, most of our staff really weren't doing anything until they showed up for the black belt class on Friday night, right? Or we might have a schedule where, from 4 to 6, they were open, they're doing intros. And then from 7 to 9, it was a class. So, I mean, to give reality is, they usually had a light day on Friday and other than our training, a relatively light day on Monday.
Even Saturday, I mean, they're only usually working from 9 or 10 till usually 3 is kind of a norm.
Yeah, exactly.
They might have a birthday. One week they'll have a birthday party or two, and then they'll be later, but they don't mind because then they're getting more money because they're getting enrollments. If everything's done right, then when they stay later, because maybe they got an event on Saturday and Sunday, so they might be working Sunday, but then they're going to get 50 appointments or 100 appointments from the event because they stayed Sunday. Now they're going to get 20 enrollments from that, and that's going to turn into this many renewals, and that's going to be this much more money in their pocket. So everything ends up working out in their favor because it's all leveraged the right way.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where I can parent my child and do all my laundry and dishes, and you know what I mean? When I'm working 6 days a week, it feels like I'm working at breakneck speed, busting my butt constantly and like it's never going to end. And that is a recipe for burnout.
No, it's not a recipe for burnout. What Tony Robbins' line about, I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember specifically, but there really is no such thing as burnout. There's impudent goals, right? So if what you're doing is clearly aligned with what your short-term and long-term goals are, and it's a big enough, clear enough picture of what you want to accomplish, it's fine. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk put a cot on the factory floor, and one time he was up for like a week straight, taking cat naps on the floor. Einstein was the same way, and those are massive outliers. But there's many stories about Ross Perot's company was the same way. I mean, many are the same way. But reality is, it's not 6 days a week. It's some weeks you're working 35 hours, some weeks you're working 60, right? And the way that, quote unquote, the normal 9 to 5 works isn't our job, right? Say it again.
I never expected that, but
let me finish the thought. Is the normal 9 to 5 world isn't our world, right?
Yeah.
But there are hell, think about people who work in a restaurant. Their shifts change every week, right? So I'm working a double on Tuesday, and I'm doing this. We know pretty much, with real regularity what 2/3 of our workday is going to look like. And every now and then we schedule an event of some sort, but even that, it's usually a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months out, right? So, and then, you know, from my standpoint, all of my full-time staff, you know, if there was going to be something that, you know, it's their kid's birthday party, it's, you know, some big deal that they need to go, their sister's getting married or something like that, and it happens to be, you know, on a day that we have something big scheduled, it was their responsibility to figure out who's going to cover it, train them, make sure they had it under control. It was never my responsibility, it was their responsibility. There's a great book. Say it again.
That's how we already do that.
Yeah. Well, but a lot of people may not think this way, right? There's a great book called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, and I'm not a big fan of 1 Minute Manager books, but that one is especially good, and I would recommend the audio of it. But and by the way, it's written based on a much more substantive book by William On King called Managing Management Time, which is really, 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 really good. But again, no, it's not the route to burnout. One is, if you don't love what you're doing, you know, go find something else now, because you're in the wrong place, wrong time anyway. Two is, if you love what you're doing and it ties with your goals and objectives, you know, that's just what this is, right? Now, you know, I'll freely admit, I mean, we've had 27-year-olds who got married and the wife just couldn't deal with, you know, the 5 to 9 being at work, or vice versa. You know, his new wife couldn't deal with it. You know, we've had young parents who, you know, just couldn't deal with it. And I understand all of those situations. I think it goes back to, is this what you love and really want to do? And if your goals and focus is strong enough, you know, you get tired, you don't get burnout, right?
And one thing that we always did, Master Oliver, that kept everybody kind of motivated to work extra hard, is that if we hit our goals for the month, then my 2 main staff each got a weekend off the following month. And I would pick the weekend because we didn't want it to have their day off on the graduation or something, but that way they each get a weekend off, not on the same weekend. And so now they've got you know, every month or every other month a weekend, if they're hitting goals.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things we would do for Renewal Blitz, is if they were on target for their goals coming into Thanksgiving, they got a 4 or 5 day weekend. If they hit the goals that we had set coming into Christmas, they'd get a 10-day break over Christmas. So yeah, absolutely building a lot of that stuff in as an incentive. I always had, you know, I made every effort for them to hit their goals so that we would be closed the week of July 4th and the week from Christmas to New Year's. I knew those were 2 weeks that are most likely to be most difficult to create a lot of business, but that way I could give everybody 2.5 weeks off a year regardless. Without it, they want to leave on August 15th, just as the middle of, we have 32 intros coming in this week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would love something like that where we could maybe get 1 weekend off a month.
Yeah, well, but the takeaway though is, what difference does it make if you're working, you know, 9 to 5, or you're essentially working second shift, right? With the exception of, freely acknowledge you have elementary age kids, and there's a conflict there, right? So you've got to figure out how to balance all that out.
But if you were a medical doctor or your surgeon, you'd have the same kind of issue.
You'd also be getting paid a lot more than 14 an hour. So
You make that's a choice, and you can make quite a bit of money in the business too.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to fix that, so everybody gets to make quite a bit of money in the business.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Jen, if it were me, I would sit down and do roles and goals, objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? You know, if this is a side job on the way to do something else, it may not be a good fit. And if this is something that fits with what you're trying to accomplish long term, you know, get together and figure out what the career path looks like and what the, income outcomes are and see if it's a good fit, right?
Yeah.
Because I think you're in the middle
Well,
of,
I work out long term. I end up basically not seeing my kids 6 days a week.
well, there's no reason you shouldn't see your kids on Saturday, Sunday. There's no reason you shouldn't see your kids on Friday. It's Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night are the times that are more likely.
Well, usually
Yeah.
you're sending them off to school at 7 o'clock in the morning. So in normal circumstances, and then sometimes we have instructors that pick their kids up and then come back to school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine is, she's not under control enough to come to the school yet. So, I mean, that could possibly be.
Well,
part
no,
of
no,
school.
that's not what he meant.
Oh.
I had it where, like when Jade was little, every now and then I'd go to school and have lunch with her, or I'd pull her up and take her out to lunch. I would go pick her up from school, take her home, and then go back to the school. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to balance it out within the needs of the hours that we have, right? When my daughter was 5, she had a series of 3rd-degree black belts that were her sitters. And so she came to the school and she had literally, 3 different 3rd-degree black belt, all girls who were her sitters who she loved. And so 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, she'd come to the school and she'd be back in that room back there. Steve and Amanda Christensen have a son that's my son's age, Chase. But, he's been in the school since he was like 2 years old. But again, it was.
And black belt now, isn't he? Or just about getting his black belt?
Yeah, he's right there. My son isn't, but he is. We are working on that now that Nick is open to
Well,
school.
see, that was the advantage, that he got to stay in the school all the time.
Yeah, admittedly, it can go the other way. It can end up being the family business syndrome too. But
I'm finding that in my situation, I like the people I work with. And honestly, if it wasn't for the not seeing my kid, because I've basically been told that she's not under control enough to really spend a long time at the studio, that I have to have someone else there 24/7 to watch her, just before, and so.
That's why we have part-time employees. Not everybody can commit to full-time, and if that's the case, then they'll work part-time for the days that they want to work. And so you either do part-time or full-time. I think we're a little dragging past our time here, Master Oliver.
Yeah. The last thing I would say, Jen, is take a deep breath and be a little bit more creative. And most of those things that you're seeing as a problem, and you're framing it as, how do I accomplish this by working 6 days a week, which has nothing to do with the problem. The piece of the problem that's a concern is really the 4 to 9, 3 to 9 piece of it, the second shift piece of it. And there's a lot of accommodations that you can make to accomplish that. Like I mentioned, pick her up from school, take her home to whoever's going to watch her, then go to the school, see her in the morning, see her at lunch, all of that kind of stuff. I never really felt that I, on our normal schedule, couldn't see the kids. Every now and then there was something going on in the evening, and I would just schedule it ahead of time, make sure my role was covered, and then, then go do that.
Yeah, I was hoping that eventually we could get to a point where Miss Smith and I the instructors could take turns having a weekend, like you suggested, So 1 week we work 6 days, the next week we work 5, and out. So there's always a manager,
There's a lot of accommodations that you can do. It's rather than get frustrated and the overused term is think out of the box. But don't be fixated on the school's open 6 days a week. And in fact, for my guys, really, it was more like they were working 4 days a week and then going and taking a black belt class. So working 5 days a week and then going and taking a black belt class most of the time. On that note, we'll call it a day.
On
And
that.
hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for your input on that.
You bet.
Thank you, sir.
Master Smith, Master Moody, you have a minute?
Yes, sir.
We lost him already.
We lost